Finally, one year, she couldn't take it anymore. Her husband went off to a long trip for his work, and she wrote home to her mother and simply said, "Mom, I'm coming home. I can't stand it here anymore." Her mother, in wisdom, wrote back a very, very short letter to her daughter. And all she simply said to her daughter was this, "Dear so-and-so," she simply wrote, where is it? Okay. "Two men looked from prison bars. One saw mud, the other stars." Two men looked from prison bars. One saw mud, the other stars. The young bride read it over and over and just hit her that the key thing was not her circumstances, but the way she saw her world around her. She started to mingle with the native Indians nearby. She couldn't speak completely with them, but she eventually got involved with the ladies in the village, and she started doing some pottery and weaving with them. And all of a sudden, the world changed. She didn't see the mud, she saw the stars. How you see this world is crucial. Jesus knows that. At the heart of Christianity, Jesus wants to teach us how to see this world the way he sees it. And only when you see this world the way Jesus sees it will you ever be involved in missions. This is Mission Sunday, and I realize that I've been through now 10 Mission Sundays with our church, and I realize every year we preach the same thing, or we try to encourage you to go on missions. I realize at a certain point that you'll never go on missions or be involved with missions unless you see the world differently. How do you see this world? If you let the culture dictate the way you see this world, you'll never be involved in missions. But if you let Jesus see this world, Jesus teach you to see this world the way he sees it, you will be involved in missions. And let's put it the other way around. The amount of effort you put into missions and involvement in missions is a reflection of how you see this world, whether it's like Jesus or like the rest of the world. Do you let the modern media teach you how to look at this world, or do you let Jesus teach you? I want to give you a little quick survey of the book of John, a few instances where Jesus taught people how to see the world differently. In John chapter 2, verse 15, Jesus went to the temple. He makes a whip, and he chases out the animals and all the goats and the sheep and the pigeons, and he turns over the tables, and the money changers in the temple, whose booths he turned over, gets upset, indignant, and he said, "What authority do you have?" And then Jesus answers, verse 19, John 2:19, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." He's teaching them to see the world differently, to see the temple differently. You're in this temple, and you think it is a marketplace, or you think it's some religious place, but I want to teach you there's something greater than temple here. And one day this temple will be gone, but I am the real temple. You will meet God, not here, but with me. And you have to deal with that. 3 days, I'll destroy his temple. He says to Nicodemus, John chapter 3, the next chapter, verse 3, Nicodemus, a leader of the Jews, comes to Jesus at night, and he asks him who he is, basically, and Jesus answers, and he simply says, verse 3, "Unless one is born again, he cannot enter or see the kingdom of God." Jesus says, you're worried about my identity, about who I am, what's my lineage and all that. And I want to tell you that the question for you now, the way you should be seeing this world is, are you born again? Who are you? Are you born again? Have you been born by the Spirit? Are you seeing this world differently? Physical birth is nice, but spiritual birth is what really counts. Do you look at the world differently? John chapter 4, just before our passage this morning, he meets a Samaritan woman at the well, and then he drops a bombshell on her worldview. He says, verse 10, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is who says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." You're worried about water here in the middle of the day. You're worried about physical water. But I want to tell you there's a spiritual water that is deeper and more fulfilling and satisfying than any physical water you'll ever drink. That's the one you need to be worried about. Spiritual water. You're worried about a temple. You're worried about birth. You're worried about water. I'm telling you, there's a spiritual temple. There's a spiritual birth. There's spiritual water that you ought to be concerned about. That's more important. Look, one more chapter 6, John. Jesus feeds over 5,000 people who are from a few barley loaves and fish. And then verse 27, he says, do not work for the food which perishes, but for the food which endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man shall give you. And that relates to our text this morning. The people who are worried about physical food. Shall we go? What are we going to eat this afternoon? Is it sushi? Are we going to go to Asian Legend? Are we going to go to? We're going to have some. Let's go for Greek today. I haven't had Vietnamese for a while. Let's try some Slovakia. Haven't had that for a while. And the people are worried about the physical food, and that's necessary for life. But Jesus says there's something deeper that you need to feed you, that can fill you up. It's spiritual food, spiritual water, spiritual food. Look at the world differently. Look at the world differently. So how does Jesus teach us to look at the world differently? Before we go into our text in John 4, 31 and 38, I just want to bring out a few things. First of all, recognize that when he talks about, today we're talking about missions. We call it in our church M3 missions or M2 missions. Different culture, different language. But what we say today about missions relates to evangelism as well. We call it M1 outreach, which is just witnessing to people next door, to your friends and family. If you have a heart for, if you're going to have a heart for overseas missions, you need a heart for local missions, called evangelism. And if you're not doing local evangelism, don't even think about overseas missions. Okay, I want you to keep that in mind. Everything we say today about overseas relates to door to door or house to house, friend to friend witnessing. I heard about William Wilberforce, the British Christian politician, a very famous. 200 years ago, he helped get rid of slavery in the British Empire, and very busy man, a politician, the equivalent of one of our senators or MPs today. And William Wilberforce, what I heard about him was very interesting. The guy was involved with these huge worldwide situations of slavery. He was in a lifetime struggle against the evils of slavery, and yet his heart for the Lord didn't just limit itself to that issue. He focused on people right next to him. And if you look at his diary, you read about William Wilberforce's diary, you read that every day after dinner for about an hour, Wilberforce would spend time quietly in his diary and write out ways to witness to his neighbors and to his friends. Isn't that amazing? I just want to bring that out because the fact is that is just the first step for missions. Evangelizing people next door. Evangelizing people that you know. He would say things like this: Mr. and Mrs. S, what books are they reading? I need to give them good ones. Walker's sermons. Call on Mrs. S and talk to her. Lend her Ven's last sermon. Inquire about the education of her children. Are they taught how to pray? They're coming to Battersea Rise to hear Ven. Call often. I need to be kind. And just remind, and that's what he did every day. After 1 hour, he just planned ways to witness, and then he would do it. One time, he thought he had not witnessed to someone. One story goes, once after talking for some time with an ill friend, with Lord N, Lord N, I don't know if it's Lord Nelson, I don't think so, but Lord N, Wilberforce was aware that he had not broached the issue of religion. Another friend came in and asked the invalid how he was. Lord N replied, well as I could be, with Wilberforce sitting here and telling me about how I'm going to hell. Okay? And I guess Wilberforce thought he wasn't talking about anything about faith, but his very attitude, the subject matter, as he interacted with his friend Lord N, even though Lord N was ill and invalid, the issues of heaven and hell showed up. That's the start of missions, when you talk about spiritual matters with your friends. So how do we have a heart for missions? How do we have a sight, a view of missions? First, we need to recognize that missions nourishes our soul before God. Missions nourishes your soul before God. Verse 31 and 32. Meanwhile, his disciples urged him, Rabbi, eat something. But he said to them, I have food to eat that you know nothing about. Verse 33. Then his disciples said to each other, could someone have brought him food? My food, verse 34, said Jesus, is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. Lord Jesus, we just got back. They just came back from the town, and the disciples are saying to him, Lord Jesus, it's the heat of the day. You just finished talking to this lady. I don't know why you're talking to a Samaritan woman. We never talk to those kind of people. But you're talking to her for half an hour. She's just run off to the city. Now it's lunchtime. It's past lunchtime. You better get something to eat or you're going to die. Have you ever had that? Someone say to you, first thing, especially, I'll make an ethnic reference here. Orientals, well, let's put it this way, okay? When I was younger, yes, when you're on the way to school, make sure have you done your homework? Have you got all your books and all that? But the main thing is, have you got your lunch, right? You got your lunch? And what do we say when we meet each other in Chinese? Sek fan ma, right? Like meaning, have you eaten, right? It might be 11 p.m. at night, and you go, hey, have you eaten, right? And food is so important in the culture. And when they get together, you eat. This week, our pastors went to a retreat in St. John's Convent, and they eat in silence. And I was remarking to our other pastors, it's so weird because for Orientals, we never eat in silence. It's a time of gathering, and it's such an important part of our day to eat together, right? Jesus, and Jesus, go eat. The disciples are saying to him, but Jesus is saying, you don't understand, guys. I've had my lunch. I'm full. I've had my buffet. Can't take another bite. I've been nourished by by a food that you've never experienced. Something has given me such joy. I feel I'm just going to rub my belly now and just relax because I'm full. Because I've been sharing the gospel. He was nourished by the gospel, by sharing the gospel. Even though you think that it would, when we come back, those who go to EV2 will know the feeling. You go to this coming Tuesday, pray for us. First day, we're going to Fairview Mall. If you want to come see us, we'll be there between 7 and 6. We'll be there about 7 to about 8 p.m., 8:30. Don't talk to us though because we're busy. We'll be at Fairview Mall, but we simply go there to share the gospel, meet up with strangers, and just share them with the gospel. And you think, I come there sometimes. We all go there a little bit nervous, a little bit apprehensive. What will happen? I always end up at the end of that night full. I'm bouncing off the walls in a sense. I'm so excited. I've been so filled by the joy of sharing the gospel with people, introducing people to Jesus. It just fills you up. Jesus is saying, this is nourishing to you. When you give, you get. In this case, okay? The more you give out in terms of evangelism and missions, the more God pours into your soul. How does that work? Because the more you give out, the more you realize how precious of what you have to give. The more you realize you've got a treasure that is inexhaustible, that this person needs. You've got the answer to the spiritual cancer in their hearts. You can solve the problems with their bosses. You can solve the problems with their boyfriend, girlfriend. You can solve their problems with their parents, with their professor, with their depression. And the more you give out, the more you realize, the more you get. And you realize how precious God is. And God fills you up. And your soul is nourished by giving the gospel to others. Your soul is nourished. I'm going to rapid fire some verses that have blessed me in this regard, in terms of giving out and getting back. Hebrews 6, God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have always shown him, as you have helped his people and continue to help them. He'll never forget what you've done. Matthew 10, verse 40, anyone who welcomes you welcomes me. So if you're welcoming someone, you're welcoming Jesus. Anyone who welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet as a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. Whoever welcomes a righteous person as a righteous person will receive a righteous person's reward. And if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones who is my disciple, truly I tell you, that person will certainly not lose their reward. Even a cup of cold water given in Jesus' name, Jesus will not forget. It will be recorded in the ledgers. It's on the hard drive that will not die, that will not fade away. It's been backed up. He knows, he remembers that cup of cold water given in Jesus' name. Colossians 3:23, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. it is the Lord Christ you are serving. And finally, Ephesians 6. Serve wholeheartedly, as if you were serving the Lord, not people, because you know that the Lord will reward each one for whatever good they do. God is not a debtor. He never forgets. And when you give, you nourish yourself. Maybe not now, but in the future. I want to ask the AV people to show a little clip that someone pointed to me. It's not a Christian video. It's actually a commercial. But it makes a point. And I want to spend a few minutes on sharing that video with you. Okay? Gentlemen?
ออกมานี่เลยนะไอ้ขี้ขโมยไหนดูสิเอาอะไรไปออกมานี่ไปทำอะไรเนี่ยฮะถามว่าเอาไปทำอะไรเอาไปให้แม่
เจ๊แป๊บนึงแม่ป่วยเหรอ
อย่าทำอย่างนี้อีกนะ
หน่วยเกาเหลาจ๋อนั่นเลยครับนั่นเลย
ป๊า
จัดไปสั่งมาเร็วต่ออะไร
Isn't that a wonderful little video? When you give, the Lord, there's not, I don't want to use all that video's analogy, but the only point I want to make from that video is this. God, when He gives back to you, gives you much more than you could ever give to other people. Okay? He gives you much more. He doesn't need you to give to missions. He doesn't need you to go overseas. He doesn't need you to evangelize in one sense. Remember one point Jesus says, out of the stones, I can make people praise me. I can use a stone, but I choose to let you give because it nourishes your soul. It blesses you. And Jesus said, after sharing the gospel with that Samaritan woman, whom He really shouldn't have been talking to in that culture, who Noah thought he should be there talking to her. For half an hour he was with her. And then He says to His disciples, I've had my lunch. That's what keeps me going. That's what gives me energy. Giving missions, evangelism nourishes your soul. and blesses you more than you can bless others. That's what he said. And quickly, let's look at the sowing and harvesting in our passage. John 4. Do you not say 4 months more and then the harvest? I tell you, open your eyes and look on the fields. They are ripe for harvest. Even now the reaper draws his wages. Even now he harvests the crop for eternal life, so that the sower and the reaper may be glad together. Thus the saying, one sows and another reaps, is true. I sent you to reap what you have not worked for. Others have done the hard work, and you have reaped of their labor, the benefits of their labor. In those days, they'd say, the old saying is, it's going to be harvest time in 4 months. Because, in those days, it's an agrarian society, sort of like Canada was many years ago. That's why we have summer holidays for school, right? Supposedly that's a time when the children of the farmers had to go on the fields, and the farmers needed their children full time to help deal with the fields. There's a timing for farming. Start in the spring, harvest in the fall, and then you have Thanksgiving, right? Jesus is saying, when it comes to evangelism and missions, there's no set timing like that. There's harvesting all over this world. Not all at the same time, but don't wait for 4 months. Start now. Don't wait. Don't be mechanistic and say that, okay, I need to make sure all my ducks are lined up and all that. There's a harvest going on right now. Look up. Look up. The fields are ripe for harvest. Find it. Harvest now. Don't wait. Don't wait. There's sowing and harvesting in the kingdom. Lift up your eyes. So go to the internet and go to operationworld.com. If you came on Friday, you know how to get onto that website. Read Operation World, the book. When you read the newspaper, pray for Iran, pray for Afghanistan, pray for Egypt, pray for New Delhi, and ask the Lord, what do you want me to do in that country? Or what can I help? How can I help? Or, Lord, what are you doing? How can I participate in it? The season is now to harvest when it comes to missions. The season is not 5 years from now. The season is now. Next week, we have our barbecue with Yorkview Heights and the Messianic congregation. There are some people there in the barbecue who are not Christians, from the other church. The season is now to talk to them about Christ, or to witness, or to befriend them first and then witness later. Don't wait. See what God is doing. Recognize, of course, there are some sowers and there are some reapers. Verse 37, 38, one sows, another reaps. I sent you to reap what you have not worked on. Others have done the hard work, and you have reaped the benefits of their labor. Jesus said, I just sowed the word to the Samaritan woman. The Samaritan woman just sowed the word to all the rest of the Samaritans. The prophets and John have sowed the prophecies and the witnessing to all the Jews over all those generations. And then when you go out, and when people come to Christ, when people become Christians, you are reaping what they have sown, they have planted. All the hard work they did, you get it. But it's not just for you. So together, we rejoice. So some of you may be reapers, others are sowers. But it doesn't matter. You're on the same team. And in heaven, you will all rejoice together. If you go to my Christian history class, I'll be talking about Robert Morrison near the end of the course about the early Protestant missionary in China. In September 7th, 1807, Morrison was sent by the London Missionary Society to China. He first went to Macau for a while, but then Macau closed its doors, and the only port that was open was Canton. And so Morrison ended up going to Canton. He's one of the only very few Protestant missionaries. He labored there for years. He tried to translate the Bible. He hardly knew any Chinese, so in those days it was illegal to teach foreigners the Chinese language, so he had to pay a lot of money to do this illegally. Someone, a Chinese native, taught him the language, but the native had to carry poison with him, just in case the government official saw him teaching Morrison, because he said the guy wants to kill himself quickly before the government killed him. That's how bad it was. And just imagine how much money Morrison had to pay. He learned the language. He ministered there for 27 years in China. 27 years, more than many of you have been alive. Okay, I figured out if it's starting today, what year would that be? That'd be like 2000. Well, anyways, okay, quite a long time today. But 27 years. Can you imagine? And he only had 10. At the end of 27 years, he had 10 converts. 10 people, and we only know of 2 of them. One became a pastor. One became the first baptized Chinese Christian. But out of 27 years, he got 10 converts. We only know 2 of them. Can you imagine that? Would you have stuck with it for all those years? 27 years. But at the end of that generation, other missionaries came, and they say by the time the missionaries were kicked out of China because of the Boxer Revolution in the 1940s, they were removed, and then the Communist Revolution. There was almost 1 million Christians at that time. But then all the pastors and all the missionaries were kicked out of China. The missionaries, the foreign missionaries. And they say today, by conservative estimates, there are over 134 million Christians in China. 134 Christians in China. 134 million. From 10. Morrison did the sowing. He did the planting. He was just faithful, trusting that one day, this country that has... can you imagine 27 years, by the 26th year, should I still be a missionary? I've only had 10 converts. What's the use? Maybe I shouldn't have wasted my life here with all these foreign Chinese people that hate me, that think I'm a foreign devil, and I should have just stayed in England. What a waste of my life. I could have made a lot of money in the banking system in England, maybe paid for someone else to go, 12 people go instead of me. But he went... he suffered for the sake of the gospel. And today, I believe those 134 million Christians, since we have all eternity to meet him, one day they'll make an appointment on their Google Calendar in heaven and say, Morrison, I'd like to thank you in this, I'll meet you at that cloud, and we'll talk about the fact that you're witnessing for 27 years as a result of me becoming a Christian. We never know what happens. You never know the fruits of your giving now. There are sowers, there are reapers. And finally, verse 36, it's a joyful work, but not an easy work. Even now the reaper draws his wages. Even now he harvests the crop for eternal life, so that the sower and the reaper may be glad together. I'm going to read you a parallel or a companion passage, 1 Corinthians 15:58. Therefore, my brothers and sisters, stand firm, let nothing move you, always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. What you do for missions will never be in vain. You might be thinking, Lord, I want to be a missionary, I want to support a missionary, or I want to pray for missionaries, but my life is in such a mess. I don't even know all the doctrines. I'm not even a member of a church yet. Lord, I love you, and I want, but Lord, I've got so much on my mind these days. My children don't allow me to sleep at nighttime. I need to pass this French test on Tuesday. I need to get into university. Lord, I'm unemployed right now. How am I supposed to help out with missions? Father, I just became a Christian, or maybe the opposite. I've been a Christian for 30 years, and I've done nothing. And you're probably very angry with me now, Lord, and maybe I should just settle down and just do what I can, but I'm just going to stick to what I'm doing right now, and I'm not going to get involved in missions. I'm retired. I'm almost ready to retire. My body's not working as it should be working these days, and I'm just worried about my marriage. I'm worried about my work. I'm worried about the world around me, and what can I do? At that point, just recognize that just start somewhere. Look at the world the way Jesus looks at the world. They're not your enemies. They're the harvest field. Are you giving in some way? I'm not talking about money, okay, necessarily. But whatever you give, like those 5 loaves and 2 fish, 5 loaves and 2 fish that a little boy had, give it in Jesus' hands and let it multiply. I think I told you the story of the old Korean lady who was giving an answer to a missionary appeal for money, and all she had was a bowl, an old rice bowl, and a pair of chopsticks. And she gave the bowl and the chopsticks to the pastor in the front. No one else was giving anything, so she decided to give those 2 things. And then the pastor said, look, Mrs. So-and-so is a retiree. She has no money, but she gave what she can. And then someone in the back yells out, I'll give you so-and-so dollars, and it's a huge amount of money for that bowl. And some other guy yells out in the other corner of the room, I'll give you so-and-so for one of those chopsticks. And another guy yells out, or a lady yells out, I'll give you so-and-so for the other chopstick. Let God use whatever you have for his glory. He could have done it himself. I think he likes to smile and say, hey, that teenager, no one knows him or her in the church, but in his heart, this morning, I believe God's saying, she made a commitment to me to be a missionary, and I know she'll fulfill it. And she just got called this morning. And through her, those people in Ecuador, there'll be 1 or 2 converts. And through them, there'll be the native people in Ecuador who will be converted. And through them, the whole society in Ecuador will be changed. Because that one girl decided on Missions Conference Sunday to give of her life to the Lord. Because all of a sudden she saw it. What do you see this morning? Let's pray. Lord God, we thank you for the privilege and honor of being part of your family. Lord, you've already given us much more than we deserve. We've given back to you a pittance, nothing compared to what you've given to us. And Father, you've already nourished our soul with the little that we've done for the sake of the kingdom. The joy that we've had and that sense and the recognition of your beauty and the joy that comes from knowing you and loving you and being with you and having your spirit in our life is more than we can ever describe. And we want to see that happen throughout this world. We want to see that happen in our schools tomorrow morning. We want to see that happen, Lord, in our workplace. We want to see that happen in our government. We want to see that happen in our city. And then, Lord, we want to see that happen throughout this world. Lord, use us, these 250 loaves and fish at NTCBC's English congregation. And then, Lord, divide us, spread us out throughout this world. And would you feed the thousands and millions who are living in darkness and in the shadow of death? Oh God, we thank you so much. Send out the best from here, we ask. For we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.